The story begins with Nadia, a young woman working as an English teacher. She had endured years of domestic violence at the hands of her husband, and after reaching her breaking point, she finally decided to divorce him. However, even after leaving her past behind, Nadia continued to struggle with emotional distress and loneliness. Seeking a fresh start, she moved to a new city and secured a job as an English teacher at a local high school. On her first day at the school, the principal introduced her to the history teacher, who was assigned to show her around the classrooms. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, we meet Kieran, a 19-year-old boy living with his family. His household consisted of his parents, a younger sister, and an older brother. Coming from a middle-class background, his family struggled to make ends meet. Kieran's older brother had resorted to selling drugs to earn extra money, but he was eventually caught and sent to prison. Kieran's parents were determined to prevent him from making the same mistakes as his brother. They constantly urged him to focus on his studies and build a better future for himself. However, Kieran had little interest in academics and found school to be a burden. Despite his poor performance, his parents still held on to hope that he would change. It was revealed that Kieran had been expelled from multiple schools in the past, and now, following in his brother's footsteps, he had also started selling illegal substances to make quick money. His primary goal was to earn enough to support his younger sister's education and ensure she had opportunities he never had. At school, Nadia was teaching her students when Kieran, who was also in her class, sat in the last row, trying to avoid drawing any attention. He spent most of his time outside class, engaging in reckless activities with his friends, often getting involved in drug use and street fights. One day, while Nadia was alone in the classroom, Raphael, the PE teacher, approached her. He complimented her unique and engaging teaching style, smiling warmly. Nadia returned his smile, and the two began a casual conversation, marking the beginning of their acquaintance. Later that night, Nadia called her mother, seeking comfort in their conversation. As they talked, emotions overwhelmed her, and she struggled to hold back tears. Being in a new city without any close connections, she felt an immense sense of loneliness. The following day, after school ended, Kieran approached Nadia and hesitantly admitted that he needed help with writing. When she asked about the topic, he replied that he had to write about himself but didn't know what to say. Sensing his hesitation, Nadia assured him that he could share anything with her and that whatever he said would remain strictly between them. But Kieran wasn't ready to open up, so he left without saying anything more. Nadia, concerned about his behavior, followed him. However, before she could speak to him again, the history teacher approached her and bluntly remarked that students like Kieran were beyond help. Nadia, refusing to believe that any student was a lost cause, firmly stated, "To me, all students are equal." The next day, as she was reviewing student records, she came across Kieran's file and learned that he was a new transfer with a history of poor academic performance. This revelation deepened her concern for him. Determined to help, she decided to pay closer attention to Kieran and guide him toward a better path. Later in class, the students were asked to present the poems they had written. When it was Kieran's turn, he nervously stood up and began reading. His poem was raw and filled with emotion, reflecting deep pain and truth. Nadia listened intently, deeply moved by his words. Once class ended, she approached Kieran and praised his poem, telling him that his writing was exceptional. She encouraged him to apply the same focus to his studies, assuring him that he had great potential. Hearing this, Kieran couldn't help but smile. It was the first time someone had appreciated his work. The next day, while at school, Nadia was approached by Raphael, the PE teacher. He invited her to join him at a bar later that evening. Wanting to unwind, Nadia agreed. That night, Nadia and Raphael enjoyed a few drinks and danced together. Unknown to her, Kieran was also at the same bar with his friends. He watched Nadia enjoying herself, smiling as he saw her happy. Seeing her dance made him want to dance too, but he remained in the background. After a while, Nadia left the bar and drove home. The following day, she noticed Kieran skipping class and wandering outside the school. Disapproving of his behavior, she confronted him later when he returned to class. Taking him aside, she firmly told him not to skip class again. She then made him an offer. She wanted to hold an extra 30-minute session for him every day after school so he could get help with his studies. Surprisingly, Kieran agreed. From that day on, Nadia started tutoring him after school. However, instead of focusing on the lessons, Kieran found himself constantly staring at her. Over time, his admiration turned into something deeper. He started developing feelings for her, but Nadia remained completely unaware of his growing affection. That night, Nadia sat alone in her apartment, feeling lost and lonely. She yearned for someone who understood her, someone she could truly connect with. Just then, there was a knock on her door. When she opened it, she was shocked to see Kieran standing there, his face bruised, his nose bleeding. His clothes were disheveled and he looked like he'd been in a fight. Worried, she quickly brought him inside. Kieran reassured her, saying, "I can't go home like this. I just need to clean up and then I'll leave." Concerned, Nadia asked what had happened to him. Kieran simply shrugged it off, calling it a small fight. He got up, preparing to leave after cleaning himself up, but just as he was about to walk out, Nadia stopped him. She noticed that it was raining outside and offered to drop Kieran home in her car. Kieran agreed, and they set off together. On the way, Nadia tried to start a conversation by asking Kieran about his family. However, he avoided the topic, making it clear that he didn't want to talk about it. A little while later, Kieran asked her to stop the car and led her to a scenic viewpoint overlooking the city. The sight was breathtaking, with the city lights glowing beautifully in the distance. As they stood there, Kieran suddenly said, "I saw you dancing at the bar. I want you to teach me how to dance." Nadia laughed, but agreed, and they began dancing together. However, as Kieran moved closer, he subtly started touching her, using the dance as an excuse. Feeling uncomfortable, Nadia quickly pulled away. She firmly told him, "This is wrong. I'm your teacher, and we can't cross this line. This shouldn't happen again." Kieran nodded, but deep down he didn't want to stop spending time with her. Nadia, on the other hand, also enjoyed his company, but refused to admit it to herself. Without saying much else, she dropped Kieran home and drove away. The next morning, Kieran's mother came across his exam results and was pleasantly surprised to see a significant improvement in his scores. Excited, she asked him how he managed to do so well. Kieran smiled and responded, "It's all because of my new teacher. She helped me." His mother, pleased with the news, told him, "I'll make sure to thank your teacher at the next parent-teacher meeting." Meanwhile, Kieran found himself scrolling through Nadia's pictures on social media. His attraction to her had now grown into something much deeper. That evening, Nadia went to the same bar again with Raphael. Coincidentally, Kieran was also there with his friends, but his eyes were locked on Nadia the entire time. At their table, Raphael curiously asked Nadia about her past, specifically about her ex-husband and why they got divorced. His questions made Nadia uncomfortable, and she excused herself to go to the restroom. Seeing her leave, Kieran followed her. The moment she stepped out of the restroom, Kieran grabbed her by the wrist and pulled her into an intense kiss. For a brief moment, Nadia gave in. Kissing him back, a part of her was undeniably drawn to him. But as soon as reality set in, she abruptly stopped and pulled away, realizing that what had just happened was completely wrong. Shaken, she quickly left and returned to Raphael, making up an excuse about her mother being unwell and needing to go home. She hurried toward the exit, but Kieran followed her. Just then, Raphael noticed Kieran walking after Nadia. Meanwhile, Kieran showed up outside Nadia's house. Nadia initially refused to meet him and told him to leave. However, Kieran pleaded, saying he only wanted to talk and apologize for what happened. Hesitant at first, Nadia eventually opened the door. Kieran took this opportunity to pour his heart out, confessing his feelings for her. But Nadia lied, saying she didn't feel the same way. Kieran didn't believe her. "If you don't want me, then why did you kiss me back that night?" he questioned. "It was a mistake," Nadia responded. Kieran, refusing to accept this, kissed her again. This time, Nadia didn't resist. She could no longer deny her feelings, and their passion took over. The two ended up getting intimate, despite knowing the significant age gap between them. Nadia realized she had fallen for Kieran. However, she warned him that no one should ever find out about their relationship. Kieran agreed, but found it amusing when she insisted that what happened between them should never happen again. The next day, Kieran visited his suppliers, continuing his involvement in the drug trade. Meanwhile, at school, Talia, the history teacher, approached Nadia, revealing her feelings for Raphael. She asked Nadia to stay away from him. Later, during an extra class, Kieran attempted to kiss Nadia again. She quickly stopped him, reminding him that they couldn't act like this in public and that no one should ever know about them. Kieran respected her wishes but playfully told her to close her eyes. When she did, he placed a delicate chain around her neck as a gift. Nadia was touched and smiled warmly. That night, Nadia confided in her mother over the phone, admitting that she had feelings for someone younger. Her mother advised her to marry someone who would truly make her happy. The next day, Nadia and Kieran went on a secret outing, spending time by a serene lake. They laughed, enjoyed each other's company, and Kieran took pictures of them together on his phone. Curious, Kieran finally asked why she had moved to this city. Nadia hesitated, but eventually opened up about her past. She revealed how her marriage had been abusive and how, after suffering for years, she had finally gathered the courage to divorce her husband and start over. Hearing this, Kieran felt deeply hurt for her and reassured her, "I will never hurt you." Later, when Kieran was taking a shower at home, his mother secretly checked his phone. To her shock, she found pictures of Kieran and Nadia together, too close to be just a student and teacher. The next day, during the parent-teacher meeting at school, Nadia went to Raphael to request a file. While handing it to her, Raphael smiled and said, "We make good friends, don't we?" One evening, Kieran's mother visited Nadia at school. As they sat down to talk, Nadia tried to explain how much Kieran had improved in his studies. But his mother suddenly grew furious. "I enrolled my son in this school so he could focus on his education, not waste his time running around with teachers like you," she snapped. "It would be best if you stay away from him." With that, she stormed out, leaving Nadia stunned. The tense exchange did not go unnoticed. The principal, seeing Kieran's mother upset, approached Nadia. "What happened?" she asked. Nadia, trying to avoid suspicion, simply replied, "She was just in a hurry to leave." However, Talia, the history teacher, who had been watching from a distance, had already begun to put the pieces together. She started suspecting that there was something more going on between Nadia and Kieran. That night, when Kieran arrived home, his mother confronted him directly. "Tell me the truth, Kieran. What's going on between you and that teacher?" Kieran didn't hesitate. "I love her," he confessed. His mother's face darkened with anger. "You have to end this right now," she demanded. She believed Nadia was taking advantage of her son. Kieran, however, defended their relationship. "It's not like that, Mom. You don't understand." A heated argument erupted, and in frustration, Kieran stormed out of the house. Meanwhile, Nadia was on the phone with her own mother. She finally confessed the truth. The younger man she had mentioned before was actually her student. Her mother was horrified. "This is wrong. You need to end this immediately," she insisted. Just then, Kieran arrived at Nadia's house. But instead of welcoming him, Nadia lashed out. "How did your mother find out about us? I told you not to tell anyone." Kieran, taken aback, replied, "I just found out today too. I didn't say anything, I swear." Nadia was visibly shaken. "You need to leave," she said firmly. "If anyone at school finds out, I'll be fired." A few hours later, Kieran returned, holding a bouquet of flowers. Seeing him at her door again, Nadia sighed. She hesitated but eventually forgave him. That night, they shared an intimate moment once again. The next morning, as they sat together, Kieran brought up the inevitable. "Sooner or later, people will find out," he said. Nadia nodded, a worried expression crossing her face. "We have to figure something out before things spiral out of control." Hearing this, Kieran said, "I have some money saved up. We could leave this place together and start fresh somewhere else." But Nadia shook her head. Running away wasn't the solution. The next day at school, Kieran was holding Nadia's hand, talking to her when Raphael saw them. His expression darkened as realization hit him this was why Kieran had been so drawn to Nadia all along. Later that evening, as Nadia stayed late at school to finish some work, Raphael seized the opportunity. He cornered her and forcefully tried to take advantage of her. Shaken and horrified, Nadia returned home, replaying the incident over and over in her mind. She had never expected Raphael to do something like this. That night, Kieran arrived at her house. Noticing her distress, he asked what was wrong. Nadia, unable to hold it in, told him everything. Kieran's hands clenched into fists. "You have to go to the police," he said, furious. But Nadia shook her head. "Raphael threatened me. If I report him, he'll expose our relationship to everyone." The next day at school, Kieran couldn't hold back his anger. The moment he saw Raphael, he lunged at him, punching him repeatedly. The fight quickly escalated, drawing attention. Within minutes, the police arrived and restrained Kieran before taking him away in handcuffs. Later, Kieran's mother arrived at the police station and got him released. But as she walked out with him, she spotted Nadia standing nearby. Fuming, she turned to her. "Stay away from my son," she warned coldly before walking away with Kieran. At school, Nadia was heartbroken, thinking about Kieran and how things had spiraled out of control. That night, she took a stand. She confronted Raphael, telling him, "Everything you did to me was caught on the school's security cameras." Raphael's face turned pale. "If you don't drop the charges against Kieran, I'll go straight to the police," she warned. Raphael, realizing he had no choice, reluctantly agreed. The next day, Kieran showed up at Nadia's house, relieved that the charges against him had been dropped. But before he could say anything, Nadia looked at him with sad eyes. "I'm leaving this city," she said softly. Kieran's smile faded. "What? Why?" Nadia took a deep breath. "Because I finally understand that our relationship is wrong. I can't do this anymore." Kieran was shattered. "No, please," he whispered, his voice breaking. Tears welled up in Nadia's eyes, but she remained firm. "You need to move on, Kieran. You have your whole life ahead of you." Kieran, devastated, watched as Nadia walked away. His chest tightened, his hands trembling with disbelief. She was really leaving. The thought clawed at him, twisting into something jagged and raw. He had given her everything. His heart, his trust, his secrets. And now she was just walking away. That night, he returned home. But instead of crumbling into his mother's arms, he paced his room like a caged animal. His grief curdled into rage. "She doesn't get to do this." The words looped in his head, each repetition fueling the fire inside him. He grabbed his phone, fingers flying over the screen. "We need to talk. One last time." Nadia didn't respond. He messaged again and again. Still nothing. His vision blurred. He knew where she'd Beth bus station at the edge of town. The last departure was at midnight. The station was nearly empty when he arrived, the flickering fluorescent lights casting long shadows, and there she was, sitting on a bench, her suitcase beside her. She looked up as he approached, her eyes widening. "Kieran, you think you can just leave?" His voice was low, dangerous. She stood, backing away. "Please, don't do this." He grabbed her arm, fingers digging in. "You don't get to ruin me," and walk away. She tried to pull free, but he yanked her closer. The station attendant glanced over, then quickly looked away. "Let me go." Her voice shook. Something inside him snapped. The knife was in his hand before he even realized he'd taken it from his pocket. A quick, brutal motion once, twice. Nadia gasped, her hands flying to her stomach. She stumbled, her knees buckling. Kieran caught her as she fell, his breath ragged. "Now, you'll never leave," he whispered. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her body went slack in his arms. For a moment, there was silence, then screaming, running footsteps. Kieran didn't move. He just held her, blood soaking through his clothes, his mind eerily calm. She's mine now, forever. Sirens wailed in the distance. The news spread fast. Teacher found dead at bus station. Student arrested. Kieran sat in his cell, staring at the wall. No tears, no regret, just the quiet certainty that he'd done what he had to. Nadia had tried to leave him, but in the end, she never really got away. The story comes to a violent, tragic end.